Gentlemen, it's time once again to discuss things.
Okay, and on that note, welcome.
What? Oh, we're doing it now?
Yep.
Oh, okay, sorry. I just kind of zoned out for a second. Greetings, children of the internet, and welcome back to another edition of Geeky Gentlemen. With me, as always, I have my friends Sid Part 2, also known as Ian. Ian, say hi.
Hi.
And then also, as always, we have our friend and companion, Milan Jeftik 1992, or we simplify it down because we're lazy to Milan. Milan, say greetings.
I like to drink because I'm Russian.
That makes
See,
so much
this
sense,
is the
it
problem
hurts.
with him. This is the problem with him. He does not follow instructions.
I know, I told him to say greetings, he talks about drinking, it's just like, well, actually, that's a good segue. Because, gentlemen, I'd like us to raise our glasses. Imaginary glasses, I don't know if any of you have real glasses,
I
so...
have a can of Pepsi. Does that count?
Yeah, raise
I've
that,
got it.
I just had a
I've-
can of... I lost it, but whatever, it's fine. Gentlemen,
I've
raise
got
your
an
glasses.
I've got an empty, glass.
Raise
that
that,
is actually-
motherfucker.
It's a martini glass, but it's empty.
Alright, raise that. Gentlemen,
I'm
we
raising.
raise our glasses to a new world of gods and monsters. This week, we are going to be taking a look at the 1935 classic horror film, The Bride of Frankenstein, the kind of delayed sequel to James Whale's original 1931 production of Frankenstein. And I wanted to do this because, one, it's getting close
Can
to
I
Halloween.
drink yet? Because my arm's just kind of hanging out here.
Take your drink, take your drink.
Okay.
Because gin, it's my only weakness. By the way, I'm going to be doing that a lot. I'm going to be quoting the movie a lot.
That's fine.
And the thing with The Bride of Frankenstein is that it's kind of a delayed sequel. I mean, it came out 4 years after the original. But more than being a delayed sequel, it's kind of unlike most sequels, it's a superior film, at least in my opinion, to the original. Definitely, budget-wise and production-wise, it's definitely superior. But just like overall, I think it's a very superior film. And I wanted to talk about it because, of course, Halloween's right around the corner. And I knew we were going to do something else for Halloween, but I thought I'd get in something. Well, I still had topic choice before Halloween. I thought I'd get something in there that I wanted to review. So we're going to be doing The Bride of Frankenstein today. As I wanted to kind of look at it as a landmark of horror. And also I wanted to get your guys' opinion because was this your first time seeing the film, or was this a repeat viewing?
Go ahead, Milan.
I just watched the third one, but I haven't really watched the first and second one. So I just finished watching them yesterday, and the thing about Frankenstein is that there's such a weird misconception in the popular culture.
Yes.
People sort of have a weird amalgamation of the idea of Frankenstein in the popular culture. They think he's an innocent. The people don't like him because he's ugly and like all that, and he's really has not really to blame for anything, and that it's really odd because the first movie, Frankenstein, the classic, is really, in my own opinion, a really creepy movie. Because this is my point. Besides the other movies, number 2 and number 3, Son of Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, in the first movie, there is no music accompaniment. There's no 1920s, 1930s. Like in old black and white movies, you'd have like an orchestra swelling.
There's only
And
2
that
beats of
adds-
score.
Yeah, and that just
It
adds
adds
to
so
the
much, yeah.
atmosphere. And it's just some of the and the cinematography in the first movie is just breathtakingly creepy. And there's something about what was the name of the director's name?
James Whale.
James Whale. There's something about his cinematography. It's just the scenes. I'm sure the fact that it's in black and white has something to do with it. But some of these scenes are burned into my retinas, into my frontal lobe. They're so iconic. Like
Yeah.
the very first scene of just all, and it's so creepy because there's no music. It's just all these people just gathered around this grave, just and they leave, and the guy just like this old chubby guy just lights a cigarette and buries the corpse, and like the foreground and background of the tombstones and the giant crucifix and the death heads, Grim Reaper statue, and it's just so iconic. This is where another geeky note that this is why Mike Mignola's artwork. If you look at his black and white artwork, you can just see that is where he got his inspiration for Hellboy from. Just the lights and shadows, the blacks and whites and grays, just how everything is shot. It's just super creepy.
And the interesting thing is that you know how the monster is often, even on the covers of the movies, he's depicted as green.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: in the films, he's supposed to look dead white, and they did that.
Yeah.
Of course, these black and white movies we're talking about. They did that by applying particular kinds of greens and blues to Boris Karloff's makeup, so that way in black and white he would show up as a dead pale white. The problem with that is that when you've got marketing on the set while you're shooting, looking at everything, not really putting it together that it's going to be in black and white, they just make all the artwork and the posters and the advertising all to mirror what they're looking at. And that's why oftentimes the monster is depicted as green, but Karloff's makeup was always supposed to be dead white.
Okay, well, to answer the question, since Milan decided to talk about the movie that we're not talking about...
it's just like a prelude. It's a prelude to...
but the question was this your first time seeing it? And then you went on a 2-minute tangent.
It's okay, Ian. Just go ahead now.
No, I'd never seen this one before. I'd seen the original... and of course I'd seen Young Frankenstein, which is obviously the superior film. I enjoyed it. Bill, to your opener, I did not find it to be a superior film. I found it, and this might be a dissenting opinion, I in fact found it to be kind of a filler film. I didn't see that there was any reason for it. I found that, a lot of it was really just a repeat of what was going on in the first movie to me. It wasn't that, different. It was kind of dull to me.
Really? I don't agree at all, but I mean...
Not at all.
I mean, the thing with Bride is that I think it takes this is my opinion on Bride. I think it's the Terminator 2 of its day. And I think that it takes what the first movie did, and James Whale was like, yeah, that was good. I tried my best there. Now here's my real potential, and he just unleashes it. And I can a little bit see where Ian's coming from, because yes, there's a good chunk in the movie where the monster is just kind of walking around the countryside, being tortured by villagers. He meets up with an old hermit, and that's where that scene in Young Frankenstein comes from. And yes, I can kind of see that. I don't agree, because it develops the monster's character to a point where he wasn't in the original film. Because in the original film, let's run this down really quick. I know we want to focus on Bride, but let me just run this down really quick. He comes to life. He is tortured by Fritz. Henry Frankenstein attempts to teach him how to function, but he kills Fritz, and Frankenstein, seeing his mistake after this murder, allows Dr. Waldman to take care of him of sorts. And when Dr. Waldman tries to dispose of the monster kills him as well, and then goes on what is called a rampage. He kills one person on screen, and that's the child in a very famous scene.
God.
And then he... Go ahead.
Sorry. So there's just one scene that just really creeped me out. It's really got to me. Is that scene where the girl's father, he's just walking down the street.
Oh God! Yeah.
Let me say, and it's just that vision. That man, just an amazing facial actor. I mean, I think most of these actors are stage actors or or silent actors, and just they're so good at they're beautiful physical actors. And it's just that scene of him just walking down the street, and the look on his face, it's heartbreaking. And that little girl, she's like wet and all covered with water and and her legs are just like limp, and he's just walking there down the street. Everyone's partying around him, and then when people see that, and they just they stop partying when they see him. He's walking through this party, people see it, and they just go silent. And the look on that man's face, the dead child in his arms, and just it was so. He was dressed like kind of peasant wear, large hat, but just the look on this man's face, and the look he had on his face when he was hunting the monster, it's like, oh my God, Frankenstein just killed a little girl.
Yeah.
That is something.
Yeah, that's a fantastic sequence of events.
Yeah.
I mean, that shot was so revolutionary for its time because, I mean, we had Dracula the same year, and that was the first sound horror film, but this film just went crazy with cinematography. Once the monster kills that little girl, he, of course, returns to Frankenstein's estate and attempts to murder Elizabeth, though he's thwarted in that. And then the monster runs off into the hills. Henry Frankenstein leads a riot against him, and the monster is burned in the windmill. Henry is injured, which I want to talk about that retcon in a second. Henry falls off the windmill, is injured, and then, of course, we see he survives in the end. Bride is different because the monster is, of course, already established, and he's already established threat. He's already running around the countryside. But the thing is that we see him kill quite a few more people, and we see him doing more stuff. And what really gets me is that we see him trying to survive, and it's so tragic. He has to steal food, terrify people to get his food. I love that shot where he walks through that forest all injured, and he takes a look into the water, attempting to drink it, and then he sees his own reflection and gets pissed. The monster is just such a tragic individual in this film.
Barlow,
and
I think it has to do with Karloff's performance because.
Oh God, it's fantastic.
His hands, he's like, it's just so classic silent film acting. Like just the look on the monster's face, and just like in the movie when he's with the old man, and other scenes where he's just stretching out his hands like, please, don't hurt me, like.
And
please,
Bill, I had a question about that. Was one of those arms prosthetic at any point in the film? Like, was it a prop or something? Because the arm he got shot in just started to look like it wasn't moving at all, like the fingers and stuff. I found that strange. Just if you looked at it, it looked all plasticky, like it was rotting or something on his hand, and the fingers weren't very far apart. And it would have made sense because that's the arm he got shot in.
The thing is, basically what it is, he got that in the fire. If you look closely at his hands, two of his fingers are fused together because the fire burnt the flesh and the fingers got fused together. So he's got his hands all kind of mangled and burned.
It wouldn't be a prosthetic because Jack Pierce absolutely hated prosthetics, and he of course did the effects for these films. All his makeup effects are all cotton and collodium stuff, all out of the kit makeups. So, Ian, not that I know of, but from what I can assume, I suppose it's just cotton, collodium, and painted things. So. I wouldn't think so, but I mean, Jack Pierce's makeup job on the monster and Bride is fantastic. The one thing that everyone points to, and I agree with this, is that there's a fantastic regeneration throughout the film, because when you first see the monster, he looks fucked up. When he emerges from that little interstice between in the windmill and he goes to kill that guy, he looks so messed up. You can see more clamps on his head than you could in the first film. He looks burnt, and he looks incredible. And there's a regeneration throughout the film where he starts to gain more hair, he starts to look less burnt, but one shot that I really like is when he first meets the old man, the hermit. And no, this isn't when he first meets him, this is after the relationship is established, and the old man is trying to teach him that fire is good. And of course, this is kind of a famous thing where the monster hates fire.
Fire bad.
Yeah, fire bad. And when the old man goes to, he does something in the fire, and the monster, of course the old man is blind, rubs his hand when he sees the fire, and was like, I never caught that before. Because, the one thing that I think everyone assumes in their mind, because, a lot of people who know of these movies haven't seen them. They just think they know them. And a lot of people, I think, assume that the monster hates fire because rotting corpse, fire does not seem to go together well. And that's it's kind of it's a good. It's
That's
kind
zombie
of
logic.
Yeah,
That's
it's zombie logic. Right. Yeah. And I was just like, that's kind of like it's a little bit of a development for the monster, because like there's a reason why he hates fire. Because the fire of the monster represents the oppression man has put on him. Because back in the first movie, Fritz tortured him with a torch, and in this movie he was burnt by fire. And then is almost burnt again when they burn down the old man's house. And then at the end of the film, it's of course blown to smithereens. Fire is his torment. And that's why I think that's the beauty of Pierce's makeup, because he's wearing that throughout the entire film. So I was just very, very impressed with that. So
one thing to mention. Everyone thinks that Frankenstein has an assistant called Igor, but in the first movie, it's a hunchback, but his name is Fritz.
Yeah.
And it's like, Igor doesn't show up till the third movie, and you don't really see him and Frankenstein working together. Igor just claims that he worked with Frankenstein.
And it's like, that didn't happen.
No, not at all.
Milan, you're pronouncing it wrong. It's Igor. And Frankenstein. Okay, sorry.
Igor. So one thing I wanted to
Actually, Bill, since you just reminded me, can I cut in first?
Go ahead.
please.
Alright. The Frankenstein, the story takes place in Germany, right? Or in like the Eastern Europe area, right?
It's kind of hit and miss.
Wait, no,
The thing is that James Whale claims that Bride of Frankenstein takes place in England because all the actors are English, but the town is a German name and it looks German. So I would just say it takes place in Never Neverland. It's a made-up fantasy.
Well, no, just like that's something that bugged the crap out of me is all the actors are like very English. I'm like, Frankenstein, Frankenstein, the family castle and everything was in Germany, or like Eastern Europe.
I mean, the town Goldstadt is a very German name. So,
Dude,
what's up?
Sorry, let me just put this thing. It's the old world as seen by the Americans. It's like, oh, it's the old country. It's Germany and Eastern Russia and all those places, kind of amalgamation of the old country.
Just like in my mind, the only monster that could take place in America was the werewolf, because Dracula was obviously from Transylvania, and I felt like Frankenstein was, just one county over kind of thing.
Well, the original Frankenstein novel takes place in Switzerland.
Okay,
yeah.
But it's in there. You got the area down. Well, the Wolfman actually takes place in England as well.
Yeah, well, some stories. I remember the first movie takes place in America. Or, I'm pretty sure, doesn't the first movie take place in America?
No. The Wolfman takes place in England.
Are we talking about the one with the fortune teller?
Yep, that's the 1941 film, The Wolfman.
I could have sworn it was American.
No, it's an American-made film, but the Lon Chaney Jr.'s character just was returning to England from America. But it takes place in England.
Okay, well, no, it's just I always associate werewolves more with America than with England and stuff like that.
American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, kind of stuff like that.
Yeah, no,
I don't know, that's just always been an association in my head, because you don't really need the old country. You don't need the old European thing to get the Wolfman, because it's you have American Indian reasons for it too, because they had similar mythologies.
Well, their werewolves are a little different, because theirs is more of it's an intentional transformation, like a skinwalker. English and European werewolves are more of what we see in the Wolfman of the curse.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying,
pentagram and all that.
And
I guess there's a certain mystique at the time. I guess there was a certain mystique about the old world forest, and there's a certain terrifying yes.
And that's why I love The Bride of Frankenstein, and also The Wolfman has this as well, is that it's a gorgeous movie. They're both gorgeous films.
Oh my god, yes.
The thing is that none of this is on location shooting in Bride of Frankenstein. There is a little bit in Frankenstein. In Bride of Frankenstein, it's all on sets. And I know that you could criticize, it looks fake. But I don't agree. I think it looks it looks fantastic. It looks,
Yeah.
and by fantastic I mean fantasy, like out there, dreamlike.
It's otherworldly. It's very otherworldly.
It's fascinating to look at, and
yeah.
it
Guys,
draws you in.
I'll be right back. I have to just go to the bathroom, but keep talking.
Sure. We're gonna go to commercial. How about that?
Here at Intergalactic Toys, we buy, sell, and trade new and vintage toys, collectibles, graphic novels, and now video games. We're looking for your iconic games, everything from Arkham Asylum to Zelda, from old school NES to current collector's editions. We'll buy, sell, and trade your games and collectibles for cash or in-store credit. We're located at State and Maple Crest next to Papa John's, 2614 Maple Crest Road. Call 260-622-TOYS. That's 260-622-8697.
Fine. So, Ian, how'd you see this film?
I saw it. I tried searching for it on Netflix, and Netflix is starting to piss me off because, like, I'll Google is blah 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 on Netflix, and then a page will pop up from Netflix's website. And I'm like, awesome, and I'll go there, and there will be the movie with the plot outline, and it'll say watch instantly, and I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna watch this instantly, and then it won't let me click it because Netflix doesn't have it. So I'm like, why the fuck are you even telling me?
It's just like a tease.
Exactly. So then I even, here's the thing, is I tried to do the right thing. So it wasn't on Netflix, so I went down to my local video store, and I tried to rent it, and I go in and, like, look around in the different F sections that they have, or the B sections, and then I didn't find it, so I walked up to the counter, I'm like, hey, do you have Bride of Frankenstein, the original from 35? Nope. Really? I mean, it's Halloween and you don't have a classic, iconic horror film in stock? Nope. Like, did someone rent it, or do you just not even have it in the store? We don't even have it. We've never had it.
Was this a Blockbuster?
No, it's Family Video. I'm like, why do you think the video rental service is failing? Tell me, please. I'm intrigued.
All they have is modern stuff. Like, Blockbuster does not have anything that was not made more than 25 years ago.
Oh, they just have Adam Sandler movies. Nothing but Adam Sandler.
Blockbuster is a piece of shit. I mean, I used to go there all the time. It's a piece of shit now. Milan, how did you see? I know you saw both, so how did you see them both?
The thing about the Bride of Frankenstein, personally, I like the original movie, the Frankenstein. It's visually and story-wise, the Bride of Frankenstein, all the points you mentioned, it's valid, but the thing about the first one that really gets me, it's the mood and the fact that there's no musical accompaniment, and it's just
Milan, we're not
that was not my question at all.
I know, but let me explain.
No,
you already did.
You already did this.
Okay, look. The second movie, the Bride. This is what I like the movie. I love it. It's an excellent movie, but there's too much musical accompaniment. There's too much.
That is not the question that you were asked.
I'm telling you what I think.
How did you see it?
Oh, how did I see it?
Ian just answered that question. No. I just asked Ian that question, then I asked you the same way I phrased it.
I'm sorry. I just.
It's okay.
I saw it. Okay. I saw it on online. Basically, I found this website called I Want to Watch This ... and it lets you watch any movie ever made, and it kind of links you to the to free streaming websites. So I watch it there.
Oh, okay. I of course have the Universal movie box set, the 100-Year Spotlight, and it has the original, and then of course it has Bride. It doesn't have Son or Ghost because Son is good, Ghost is a piece of shit. Don't watch Ghost.
Oh my god.
Which one? Bill, I think it was you I was talking to, or maybe I just made this up in my head and I'm convinced that someone told it to me. In one of the books or the movie, did they ever put Frankenstein's brain into the monster?
In Ghost of Frankenstein, they put Igor's brain into the monster, which resulted him dying because they have different blood types.
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually really clever. I gotta give it that much. That's really clever, even if it was a shit movie. That's a clever idea.
Well, the scene is a piece of crap because.
Well, I'm just saying, I would not see that coming at all. You gotta say, like, for a monster movie, that is a very, very unique twist to take.
Fair enough, but I mean, just the scene is hilarious. It's so bad.
Okay.
Because to hear Lon Chaney Jr. have the voice of Bela Lugosi is hilarious.
Well, no, I found that interesting. I don't
Fair
know
enough.
what it was like. Oh, it was the beginning of this movie. I'm watching it, and Dr. Frankenstein's dead, and we know that the monster is. You know the monster's alive, even though they haven't told you it's still alive.
Yeah.
So like in the beginning, Frankenstein's dead, monster's obviously alive.
Yeah, well, you see it.
I was thinking about it. Well, no, not yet, though. Not yet. In the very beginning of the movie here. After the horrible intro, prologue, whatever you want to call it, with the terrible continuity of shots.
Yeah.
Anyway, like, I was thinking, oh my god, how clever would it be if instead of just magically coming back to life, they took Dr. Frankenstein's head out of his body
You mean the brain?
and put it in the monster. Yeah, brain, whatever. That would have been so good. To me, at least. That would have been a great plot. I think.
Maybe, I don't know. I'd have to see the movie because that sounds very, very iffy for me. That sounds very, very iffy for me. I can't talk because.
Well, no, if they did it well. If they did it well.
Oh, sure. I'd love to see that.
Yeah. But it sounds a little bit too, I don't know, a little bit too 50s sci-fi monster movie.
Oh, yeah, because digging up corpses and stitching them together is way cool. That's not too far. But taking the brain out of the doctor.
No, it's not that it's too far.
Yeah, you burnt too many bridges.
No, it's not that it's too far. It's just, I don't know. It just doesn't sound like it could go. Well, maybe it could go in an interesting direction. You need the right writer. Like, for example, just the writer of Ghost of Frankenstein could not write that well. So if the writer of Bride could write that well, sure. So I'd like to see that, just not this time. Like maybe in a sequel. But the really interesting. I want to get into what Ian was criticizing before with the discontinuity of shots.
Yeah, like that intro scene. I'll be fair. That intro scene was the worst place for it, and I almost feel like that was thrown in last minute because the studio was like, no, you need some kind of prologue. But like the really obvious part was when the Baron or whatever his name was, he was like, suddenly really close to Mary Shelley, and then like suddenly halfway across the room from Mary Shelley.
Oh, Lord Byron.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, the thing. Well, let me just say these two things. One, yes, you're right. The editing in this film is gonna be a little off, though it's not as bad as the first one. The first one has some really choppy editing in it. I mean, it's early sound film. I mean, I think we have to kind of take that with a grain of salt, but fair enough. It can be a little clunky by today's standards.
Not even by today's standards. We're talking about continuity of your shots. That goes back to silent film. They knew what they were doing.
But with sound.
Well, no, I'm not talking about the sound. The sound was fine. I'm talking about the continuity from shot to shot, because it would cut. Oh, the other really good example is when the monster is trying to save that girl in the lake, the shepherd girl, the shepherdess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's in some shots he's up close and he's putting his hand over her mouth, and then shots farther away you see his hand isn't over her mouth as she's screaming. It's continuity of shots like that. There's a missing thing. They didn't show the movement of the arm, so from shot to shot it's just disappearing arm. And the intro scene was the worst because, like I said, in one shot Lord Byron is really, really close to Mary Shelley, and then in the far shot he's halfway across the room, and then in the medium shot he's right by the couch. So it's the fuck is going on here? It's like the actor moved across the room when they were doing the close-ups just to get closer to the microphone, maybe, I don't know, and then in the faraway shots he would just jump back really quick.
Dude, I have an explanation for this. It's Lord Byron. He has complete and utter control over time and space, so he can be any place, anywhere he wants to be.
Well, he's the greatest.
I can't believe I didn't think of that, Milan.
Yeah.
I can't believe I didn't think about that. That makes so much sense.
How dare you?
Yeah.
We should vote you for that. No, it's well, the only thing I can kind of think of, and I'm only basing this on the three scenes that the two that you mentioned, and one I'm going to mention. The place where it was the worst for me, and it sucks because I love this shot, is when the monster is in the graveyard and he's walking through. Clearly the shot was supposed to cut 2 seconds earlier because you see him standing still waiting for his cue to start walking. That was the one where I was like, dude, really? You're James Whale? Really? But I love that shot, but that 1-2 second little thing bothers me. Here's why I think it might have happened. The first scene, you'll notice Mary Shelley is not exactly wearing the most conservative of dresses. And in the documentary She's Alive on the DVD, they mention that that was not too popular amongst the censors at Universal. There was no MPRAA yet, so there was no rating system for film, but there were censors. And Bride was butchered. And that opening scene was butchered because of that revealing clothing. Now, of course, it still remains in there. You can clearly see it. You can clearly see that she's got a good chunk of her cleavage exposed. But I can kind of
Howard Hughes.
I can kind of see where it might have been butchered a little bit. In the part where the monster is shutting that girl, the shepherdess up, Bride was butchered for its violence as well, because for 1935 this was pretty intense.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I'm just saying, regardless of whether or not there's an excuse for it, it's still a problem.
I agree. No, I agree. It's just that and again, I only know it's there because I'm obsessed with this shit. So your average Joe who goes to see this movie just because he's interested in film is not going to know that. So,
yeah,
fair enough. It's a fair criticism. It doesn't bother me only because, one, I know why it's there, and two, the stuff around it is so amazing that I just don't care.
That's fine. I'm just pointing it out because it's something. It really, especially in the opening scene, that really made it kind of a is this gonna be a really shitty movie? And it wasn't a shitty movie. I just didn't care for it. I have no problem if you like it. That's fine. That's your own thing. I'm just saying, for me personally, it doesn't really do that much that's impressive to me.
What do you guys think about the actual intro? Not the editing, but just like the whole.
Oh, I was about to get to that.
Yeah, Mary Shelley is actually telling.
I thought it was completely superfluous, and I thought I would have been okay with it if they went back there at the end of the movie.
Yeah,
but they don't.
They don't.
If it was just a bookend, it would have been better.
They don't. Yeah. Like, if it had been like Crypt Keeper style,
that'd
have been cool. But they just nope. Too bad. We threw this in here.
Well, it's
just so that we can say, oh, but Mary Shelley had a second story to tell.
The thing is that this is 4 years after the first movie.
Yeah.
There was no DVD. There was no video.
No.
There was very few. This movie wasn't the first one wasn't re-released until 1938, after this film was made. People might have forgotten things. I agree. It's weird, especially. I would have been fine with it if they had it in the first movie too, because it would have seemed like, this is Mary Shelley's second story. But I know why it's there, because people, back then they might have forgotten things that happened, and also James Whale uses it as an excuse to change things, because if you'll know, at the end of the first Frankenstein movie, we see a happy ending of Henry being nursed back to health by Elizabeth, and they're toasting to the House of Frankenstein. James Whale hated that ending. He wanted it gone. Now, he doesn't completely retcon it because, of course, Henry does survive, but he does change the hell out of it. Because, for one, we don't see Henry's father in this film, who we see at the end of the first film. And, of course, what was I going to say? Whatever, we changed that ending a little bit. So I think James Whale was using as an excuse to change the ending of the first movie a little bit, or at least change it in the context of this story that Henry might have died, because James Whale wanted it in the classic style of Henry is destroyed by the monster he created. But Universal wanted a happy ending and they wanted a sequel, so that's why I think James Whale wanted it in there. And of course the explaining what happened in the first movie is why I think the studio wanted it in there. But I personally really like the way it sets up the first shot of Bride of Frankenstein, because we have Mary Shelley, Lord Byron and Percy Shelley sit down to listen to her story, and then she starts telling it verbally, and then it fades into the film. It's almost like a dream. I really liked it, especially when she says, as the golden ambers rose up, the fire started to die down, and then it cuts into the villagers screaming in the fire in the inferno. I loved that.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
I did like it. And
And
that's the
that's-
thing, is this could have been a really cool intro, but you really felt that it was rushed and that it was thrown in after the fact. Or at least I did.
Well, it is in the screenplay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's used to kind of in some great effect to well, it gives the excuse for because if you look at the two films, some of the locations aren't really don't really match up. At the end of the first movie, you see the house is very Victorian type of affair, but like in the second movie, it's a castle, and I guess it gives it a sort of an excuse to change things around. It makes the story kind of liquid.
Elizabeth's different actress. What?
Yeah, exactly, and so is the Burgermeister. Like in the first movie, he's like this chubby.
That too.
Yeah, and so
the
is
thing that bothers me about that is that you see the original Burgermeister in the intro, and it's like, what?
Yeah,
You lose 80 pounds off screen. What happened?
Yeah,
Obviously.
And the thing that really pisses me off. The thing that really doesn't really piss me off, but it kind of bothers me is that I love the man who played the father whose child had died. He was just so kind of. He was a great actor. Great. He didn't have much dialogue, but just he had such a presence of grief. And like in the second movie, he's just turned into this old man, and he has a wife. And Frankenstein kills him and the wife, and it's like, oh, Frankenstein's
monster.
Frankenstein's monster. I'm sorry. Just
No, it's fine. Just watch that.
Frankenstein. But the thing is,
I don't know. I didn't have a problem with it because he looked fine. I mean, he could tell he's a different actor, but he looked right. He had the right attitude. I mean, he ran right down in there to see if the monster was dead, and of course he got his.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a good thing he died really quickly. Let me put it that way. Otherwise it probably would have been a really bad performance if he lived on screen for a couple minutes. And actually, speaking of horrendous performances, the fucking maid. Oh my god, I hated her.
Oh no, Connor. James Whale was in love with her, and not in a sexual sense, because James Whale was a homosexual, but he loved her as an actress sense. She's fucking annoying. The reason why she's in this is because she was in The Invisible Man, which came out 2 years, another James Whale film, which is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh, it's fantastic.
And she played the innkeeper. What the hell's her name? Mrs. Hall in The Invisible Man. Same exact performance. That kind of shit.
Dude, the sounds she make, it's like an ostrich getting
here's the thing. The thing.
God.
You see that scene after Frankenstein kills the old man and his wife.
And that's the thing that gets me. It's the tonal inconsistency. It's like, oh,
no.
murdered a family, and now it's funny. No,
it wasn't even funny. It was like watching someone try to be a fucking Looney Tune. It was like watching Daffy Duck become an old, shriveled up woman seeing Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And it was horrible.
Oh my god.
It was so fucking dumb. I was like, what the fuck is this movie trying to do right now?
Yeah, and that's the thing that's the biggest criticism I have for the second movie. The first movie, it had a consistent tone, and it was a creepy film. But the second film, it was just the musical accompaniment, that like crazy screaming lady. They tried to add like these weird bursts of comedy. They used her as a sort of comic relief, quote unquote, but it doesn't work because it's like, oh, Frankenstein just butchered a family. Oh, he scared this crazy lady. Oh, it's like, god damn it, he just murdered the man and wife of the
Then
child.
she's inconsistent. Like, she's supposed to be, a maid or a housekeeper, whatever, for the Frankenstein house. And yet, she's like everywhere the monster shows up when there are people around.
Yeah.
Like, she just randomly is in the woods, and then she's randomly like looking into the cell that they lock Frankenstein in, or Frankenstein's monster in, for a whole 2.5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest problem with her is that it's clearly just James Whale putting in an actress he likes, and I have no problem with that if it's a cameo. This is not a cameo.
This is a major character as far as
Orson Welles in Waterloo, cameo. Una O'Connor, Bride of Frankenstein, main character, or at least integral side character. It's just like, James Whale, I love you, but just do it somewhere else. I mean, it's just it's unnecessary here. Here's the thing, Milan, I completely disagree with you. I don't think the tone is that jagged, because here's the thing. I made this point earlier. This is really not a realistic or seriously toned film at all. And I think that the thing is that it's a dreamlike, as I said, it's this dreamlike quality film. And the thing that I absolutely adore about it is that, at least for me, I don't think you guys are going to agree with me on this, so I'm expecting it, is that it manages to be a serious, tragic, horrific film, or at least horrific for 1935, while also being really entertaining and having some levels of camp. And I don't mean like the campy Batman show. Camp in like moments of the characters and the actors and the director and the producers all saying, you know, this is fun. And horror films can be fun. Not anymore, because now they're just gross. But horror films can be fun. Dr. Pretorius, I love him.
Yeah.
And
but the thing is, the thing is about that. It's, yes, I agree with that. I'm not against having some camp in a horror film, but it's just Frankenstein. Like, he's all burnt up, his arms all fucked up, and he's walking through the woods.
Frankenstein's monster.
Frankenstein's monster. I'm sorry, but the music, it's just like this, you know, Snow White, like birds are chirping, and you have this horrible burnt corpse walking through the woods holding his arm. It's like da 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 da.
Well, the scene around him is gorgeous.
I know it is, but it's just like, this is a horrible walking corpse, and it's like, I'm sure if they had like something less than just like this chirpy Snow White song, then yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to do that, but again, I completely disagree. I love Frank Waxman's score, especially his new theme for the monster. I think it's used a little too much, but I mean, Universal uses their monster themes like to death. It's not as bad. It's not as bad here as it is in future films. But the thing I like about the music is that, again, it adds to the dreamlike quality. But more than that, because I don't want to keep using that as the crutch of my points. The thing that I really like about Frank Waxman's score is that it always adds to the scenery, and it always complements it, at least in my opinion. And that's the perfect thing for me, is that you've got the monster horribly disfigured, burnt up, you know, been beaten and brutalized, walking through this beautiful forest, and he can't have any of it. It's almost like the music score and the scenery is mocking him. Because then when he looks in the water and sees his reflection and he just splashes it away, he hates himself. And I feel like the music and the scenery is mocking him, like, you can't have this because you're unnatural. And the climax of that is the shepherdess coming over, all beautiful, smiling, taking care of her gorgeous sheep, and then you've got the monster wanting to interact. She's horrified, nearly dies because he tries to interact. It's so sad to me, and that's why I love The Bride of Frankenstein, is Frankenstein's monster himself, and Karloff is a fantastic as him. Go ahead, Mark.
He is, but looking at it in that perspective, I guess, yeah, I can see that, but there's this, first, I just want to get this out of the way. About the first movie, it had a dreamlike quality. I understand you mean like the second movie has a dreamlike quality also, but so did the first one. The first one had the dreamlike quality of a very unnerving, silent nightmare that you're just kind of going through, and you're just seeing all these, tragic events and just this weird, surrealist imagery. And in the first one, it's more of it's sort of a mix of the nightmare and the kind of like, it's a very oddly scary camp Frankenstein movie in the best ways possible. But one more thing, Dr. Pretorius' homunculi, that's a very good, the whole mixture between camp and horror. He shows off.
Wait, I'm confused. Are you talking about the first one or the second one? Because you just completely switch trains of thoughts.
Sorry. It's just about the tonal shift. Looking at it from your perspective, I can see it how in some scenes it really works. Like Dr. Pretorius says when he shows off his homunculi, his little people in the jars.
Which, by the way, for the time, most visually impressive effect in the film. I gotta say, as a video editor, I could do that, but it would take me a couple hours, and I can only imagine all the work they had to do to get it to work with this one. But I was very impressed.
It was really impressive.
It looks great.
Yeah, but let me just finish my point.
Sure, go ahead.
See, he shows off his homunculi, and it's a sort of a semi-lighthearted scene, very camp horror. But then he like sits down as Frankenstein, and he gets serious, and it's like, I grew life from seed, because that's and it's like, wow, they let them say that because homunculi are basically little people grown from semen.
Yeah, that's basically what he's saying.
Yeah, and it's just like, damn, he's just like all lighthearted, mini king, mini queen, mini priest, the devil, mini devil, and it's like all of a sudden, like, I grew life from my own semen. I know how it feels.
Well, that's not what he
God.
said.
Well, basically, that's that's the gist of.
Hold on, just say that again for me. I want that sentence to be said.
And I want Ernest Dessinger to say it. I grew life from my own semen.
Oh god.
Hold on, say it in your Russian voice.
Okay, hold on. I grew life from my own semen. Let me say it.
That's what I'm gonna tell my son on his birthday.
On his 18th birthday, son.
I grew life from my own semen.
Let me say it again. I grew life from my own semen.
No, that ruined.
Hold on, just make that like your like status update or whatever. Like, you know how you can have something about yourself on your YouTube? Just make that.
I grew life from my own semen.
That's funny as hell, and it's totally inappropriate. Third grade humor.
On the subject of Dr. Okay. On the subject of Dr. Pretorius, I just love him because he's just such a crazy motherfucker, but he's so funny. I mean, like, he's just
and he's
there
fine with it too, and that's why he's totally cool with it, and that's why I love him.
Yeah, he's like sitting in the crypt, with a skull and like bones all around and drinking. He's like laughing his ass off, and then the Frankenstein's monster comes in.
Just call him the monster. It's easier. You're gonna get your list confused.
And then the monster comes in, and he's like, it turns out like, oh, hello, I thought I was alone. And
that was odd to me, because I mean, even if you are fucking
his
10 times wacko,
strange.
Yeah, even if you are 10 shades of crazy, you should probably freak out just a little bit when you first see Frankenstein monster. Like, you should have at least dropped the glass or something. He was just like, oh, hi.
Well, the thing that bothers me is that he's never seen the monster personally.
Yeah.
That's what bugs me. I'm just like, yeah, you love the dead, but look at that. That's not exactly dead. I mean, have a little bit more. I mean,
he grew life from his own semen. You can't really shock this guy.
Yeah, but again, that was the point of the I mean, even the bride freaks out when she sees him.
Yeah, and like that gets to probably my biggest criticism of the film. Here we have a film called Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, I knew you were gonna get into this. Go ahead.
Yeah, here we have a film called Bride of Frankenstein, and the whole movie is about them making a bride for Frankenstein after, the first half hour of exposition and such. But then, by the time she's finally on screen, she screams 3-4 times, kind of walks and sways a little, and then she dies along with the rest of them, supposedly. Alright. The fuck? This could have been such a much more interesting film if instead of focusing on all the, let's repeat the plot of the first movie and get all these body parts to make the monster plot that they went with, it's like within the first 20 minutes after Pretorius is on screen, they make her, and then they have to deal with trying to get these two together. And that could have been so interesting if she was naturally intelligent, because she had apparently the perfect brain. If she was naturally intelligent and was articulate and would tell Frankenstein, or would tell the monster directly, no one would ever want to be with you. Because one, that would continue the theme that they had already, and that they tried to just shoehorn in with her screaming. It would have been so much more interesting if the monster faced absolute rejection from someone who was exactly like him anyway.
He did, though.
Yeah, but he did, but it was done so poorly because all she did is scream, so we only laugh at her. We don't feel the monster's pain in being rejected.
Oh, I don't agree at all.
No,
No,
she's just this like crazy freak now. She just screams. She doesn't have any substance. If she had substance, if we followed her character, if we emphasized with her character and with the monster's character, we would have a very interesting juxtaposition here.
That movie was made, the one you just described.
Really?
It's called The Bride. It's basically a remake of this movie. It came out, guess early 80s, I'm not sure. It's exactly that, what you mentioned. I do recommend you see it. It's not bad. The guy who plays Dr. Frankenstein is terrible. It's Sting.
Really?
But the rest of the movie is
That's
all
the
right.
problem with the 80s right there. That pretty much summarizes the problem with the 80s.
It's basically an unofficial sequel to this film. It's not bad. It's all right. The problem is that the acting is really not quite up to snuff. But yeah, the bride is articulate, and she basically says that to the monster. The thing I really like about this is that, honestly, Ian, I didn't need any of that because we already had it suggested, and that was the theme of the entire film. Before that, with the monster meeting up with the old man, the place being burned down, him running around trying to connect.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's my problem with it. They get this theme across anyway, but it's not about the bride. If it's going to be called
she's
Bride
the climax of it, because she's exactly like him, as you said, and she still rejects him, and that's all the monster needs to say, "We belong dead." He blows the place up, kills him and her. That's all.
I think it would have been a much better movie. Like, it either should be renamed Frankenstein 2, or it should involve the bride as an actual character.
Frankenstein 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Yes.
Well, it was originally supposed to be called The Return of Frankenstein, but
that would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Call it The Return of Frankenstein.
I'm not
that
saying
would
I
have been
disagree.
acceptable.
I'm not saying I disagree, but like, I love the movie the way it is. I thought that it worked perfectly like that because I didn't need the bride to be a character. It would have been nice, but I mean, I just didn't need it. And I thought that the film built up to that beautifully, and it was so tragic. And one shot I love is when the monster reaches out his hands like he has been the whole film, and they've got Carl's blood on them. And that's when she screams.
Yeah. I think I agree with Bill because the bride is exactly like Frankenstein because she can't talk. She's basically like he was when in the first movie.
That's the thing. She should be able to talk because she doesn't have some psychopath's brain that was picked out of a corpse.
Yeah, but she has
like
2 minutes old.
Perfect brain.
Yeah. But let me just say something. There's a very interesting theme in these movies. It's almost, especially compared to the book. There's let me just a little prelude. See the scene with the old man. The old man, brings the monster in and he feeds him and he becomes friends with him. And there's a very strong Christian, brotherhood type feel through the movie. But that scene is mirrored in when the monster meets up with Pretorius, and you get basically the same scene, but instead of like
the monster's descent into hell.
No, let me explain. It's basically the scene with the old man is mirrored with Pretorius, but instead of being in a warm, friendly environment with the Christian cross in the background, it's in a corpse hole. It's in a vault where all the dead people are, and it's with Pretorius, the evil man of science, drinking among the bones. And there's a very anti-science stream in these movies, I think. I mean, like, it's always like in the book, I read the book, there's no real, it's not the book isn't a science shouldn't go too far type of a thing. It's more of a you should be responsible for your own creations. But
well, it is kind of science, but you're right. It is more about that because there's very little science in the book.
Actually, let me
explain. Let me
bring up something to that point, Milan.
Let me just get this thing out of the way and then bring up. Okay, basically in the book, it's it's a very it's obvious that there is no God in this world. Sure, they reference him like as not as an actual being, but as like a verbal, like oh my God and stuff like that. But there's a scene in the book where young Frankenstein, reads about alchemy, and he studies up on alchemy, and then he goes to medical school, and everybody laughs at him. It's like, oh my God, alchemy's retarded old science, and he agrees with this, and he's like, oh my goodness, and that's what gives him the passion for medical science, and he rejects all this old, outdated alchemy knowledge. but the thing about the book, he discovers the tiny he brings back the monster through medical science, through some brain chemistry or something like that. He doesn't really mention any lightning, and it's a very the book is very pro science, but the movies, I guess it has to do with like the majority, they didn't want like an atheistic monster movie, and I guess they had in the
Bride
movies
is very atheistic.
yeah, but
Or at least anti-Christian.
not anti-Christian. Like it's just there's a very strong Christian message in both movies. It's like Christianity is good. Don't mess around with science. All those crazy scientists, digging up corpses and stitching them together.
Okay, can I come in now, because this is really, really relevant now.
Okay, go ahead.
Name a movie where the main character is a scientist and a hero that is not destroying a problem that they created, besides Contact.
What's the question?
Name a movie where the main character is a scientist and a hero, and they're not destroying something of their own creation.
Independence Day.
Okay, there's one. So we got two. Contact and Independence Day. See what I mean? That's the big problem, is they've been talking about that. Scientists are always portrayed as, going too far or not fully understanding. There's very few films and books or any kind of media that portrays scientists in a positive light, which is interesting, because there's some of our, actual real-life greatest heroes. Neil Armstrong, he always said, no, I'm not a hero, it's the people that got me there that are heroes, and it's the people that got me back that are heroes. I was a glorified, passenger.
Oh my God! You shouldn't go into God's domain. That's the majority of it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like a lot of scientists are talking about that. It's like it's a real problem in our media that we very rarely portray scientists as positive characters. Like there are plenty of movies where the scientist is the hero. Like, okay, I'll give you Godzilla, because what's his face with the eye patch kind of saves the day.
Dr. Serizawa.
No,
actually, that's not the case, because yes, the Oxygen Destroyer is used to destroy Godzilla, but even then, it's depicted as a Frankenstein type scenario where you shouldn't have done that.
It's not him that created the problem, is what I'm getting at.
No, he created the Oxygen Destroyer, though.
Oh, I was talking about he didn't create the problem.
Oh, no. Oh, well, here's the thing. I was talking about how the Oxygen Destroyer could have become the next arms race, and
that's true.
And it is kind of portrayed in that light. So he's still, and that's why he commits suicide. So it is kind of portrayed in the negative light, though. Here's the interesting thing, though. After the 40s, scientists were there were two kinds of scientists. There were the scientist heroes who always got the women, and then there were the scientist villains who always created the monsters. One interesting example that's kind of contrary to that is a Creature from the Black Lagoon, in that the main hero of the film is a scientist, but he's a sane scientist. That's the difference. And I heard an interesting distinction while watching the Creature from the Black Lagoon with the commentary on that film. He said that this main hero, Dr. Reed, is not trying to inflict his own views on nature. He's simply trying to explore nature. And that's the distinction with the villain, who is trying to take nature and make it his own thing by capturing the Gillman and bringing him back to civilization. So I feel like after the 40s, there were still mad scientists, but we got a bigger distinction.
I'll give you that. I mean, I'm just saying, it's something that scientists, actual real-life scientists have talked about, where they have a problem with that they're very rarely portrayed in a positive light, where they're not solving a problem they created.
That's the thing. In the Kennedy years, before the Kennedy administration, scientists, the popular culture was filled with mad scientists, encroaching on God's domain and creating monsters and death weapons and shit like that. But with the Kennedy administration, there was you gotta, especially in the comics, with guys like Hal Jordan, not Hal Jordan, with the Flash, I forget what his name is, but
Barry Allen?
Barry Allen and the Atom, there was, he said Kennedy wanted a more positive portrayal of scientists, so that the young people who are reading these comics would be interested in science, and to get the humanity out into space. And so they're like, oh, the flash facts. There was more science involved. And basically, the old, Silver Age Flash stories are just chemistry, basic chemistry, but with superheroes. A chemical chemistry class becomes a superhero battle. And I guess after Kennedy, there was more of I don't know, the old cliche of the evil mad scientist creating monsters kind of came back, and and in certain ways you can see that distinction in real life. I mean, what heroes in real life that are besides outside the atheist community and rationalists that are the mainstream doesn't really see scientists as anything but not just like nerds growing up, man, and only like Jersey Shore and the sports stars that make billions of dollars bouncing a ball around are really seen as worthwhile human beings in the popular culture, the mainstream. While and like in the mainstream cinema, the scientist is always like going too far, God's domain, or blah blah blah. But the stupid the sportsman is idolized more than the actual scientist, where the opposite should be true.
Well, the reason for that, let's not harp on everyone for that. It's because
not
the thing is, what people in sports do is immediately satisfactory, whereas scientists, it takes time to really understand the scope of what just happened. To be frank about it, like if you're a scientist, you got to spend years doing something. Like there are very few dramatic, this is science, this is the epitome of science. Like it takes time for people to want to appreciate it, for people to accept it and stuff like that. I mean, Darwin's a lot of people's hero, but in his lifetime, he was not really that big. I mean, he got big towards the very end with The Origin of Species, but people really didn't understand just how much it meant until decades after his death.
Same thing with like Galileo.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is these major names in science are so far and few in between. It goes Newton, Einstein. Like that's a couple hundred years.
Here's
apart.
my problem with scientist depiction in media. I think it's way too generalized. Like when we say a mad scientist, okay, mad scientist of what? What exactly is he doing that is mad? Is he creating monsters? Is he creating a death weapon? Is he trying to find out how we can grow a third arm from our ass? Different stuff like this.
That would make wiping so much easier.
But it makes shitting a fucking nightmare. And here's the thing, I think that there are different kinds of scientists. There are the medical scientists. I mean, no one in a movie is going to depict a guy trying to find the cure for cancer as going beyond God's domain. If they do,
I don't know. There's some evangelists out there. Westboro Baptist Church might, though. Let's not go too far with our generalizations here.
What do you mean?
The Westboro Baptist Church, the people that are so crazy they protested Comic-Con because the people there are idol worshippers.
Well, they're insane. So let's pretend they don't exist.
Because that solves all the world's problems.
Yes, It does. Apathy is the solution to every problem in the world. So I think we're kind of.
That's his world philosophy.
That is my philosophy of life. No, it's not. I'll put that on a book. Apathy is the solution to every problem. So what was I about to say?
I don't know. I'm sorry I interrupted you. There was something about a third arm out of our ass. You were talking about.
No. It's just like, what is the scientist trying to do? Again, I don't think any normal person who doesn't have some extremist philosophy about God or extremist philosophy in the other direction is going to make a film about a guy searching for the cure for cancer, going too far in the realm of science and going beyond the realms of God. Same thing, more personal example, the cure for muscular dystrophy. No one's going to portray them as evil or going too far. And I think that, again, it's a generalization, because it's just like you're saying that, okay, so the one trying to make the third arm grow out of her ass, he's going too far. He's going beyond the realm of God. But the one who's trying to find a cure for a disease isn't. It's too generalized. I think that you need to take scientists on a case-by-case basis in film. It just depends. So that's my point is very convoluted. I apologize for that.
No, that's fine. Actually, just to not, it doesn't contradict you. It made me think of this. The scene is probably my favorite scene in Superman Doomsday, is when Lex Luthor cures MS, and then tells his assistant to go take it down to the lab so that they can turn it into an all-life treatment instead of just a one-shot inoculation, so he can make more money off of Jerry's kids.
Yeah, I wanted to punch him in the face for that.
Yeah,
that was the scene that made me hate Lex Luthor. Was I hate you.
But it was a really good character scene.
No, it's a great character scene, but I hated him for it. All right, so I think I've taken this into a kind of a personal thing I didn't want to get into, but I think Ian, you're gonna want to end this soon, I'm assuming. So I think we should kind of bring this back to Bride.
Before we do, Bill,
sure,
before we do, I just got at this one point. I think in majority of scientific depictions in the depictions of scientists in popular culture is that mostly we get the militarized view of things. Like there's never a when there's like a science fiction element like outer space, we always get the militarized point of view, like, oh, we gotta blow it up, we gotta destroy it. There's never
right. And then we always get the opposing science.
There's never been like more of a scientifically humanist perspective on the movie. It's not like, wow, look at that, we're exploring space. Look at all this, different planets, stuff like that. It's mostly we gotta blow it up. Yes, Bill? Yes, Ian?
Contact. Have you ever seen it?
No.
That was kind of the whole purpose of that movie.
Oh, Contact.
Yeah.
Those movies are too far between.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. But let's take it back to Bride and finish up.
So here's how I wanted to kind of bring it back to Bride, because the interesting thing about Bride, and this is how most film historians describe it, is that you've got Henry Frankenstein, who just went through this major climax of his life by creating the monster, and throughout Bride, he cements it as a mistake he made. In one of his first scenes where he's talking, he says something akin to, I shouldn't have done that, it was blasphemous. And then, of course, Elizabeth agrees with him. But even though he kind of trails off and is like, but it could have been glorious. And then she's like, I see the Grim Reaper there trying to take you away from me. And then Dr. Pretorius walks in. And
that was such a weird scene. Like, sorry to interrupt you. That was so odd, because it looked like they were trying to build something with her when she started, like, hallucinating.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I'm like, what?
And then they just drop it and never come back.
Well, they kind of do, because Dr. Pretorius walks in, and then here's where I get into my point. And James Whale has kind of come out and said this, is that Dr. Pretorius is taking Henry away from his comfortable, quote-unquote, normal life and saying, come back to mad science, it's fun and glorious. And, he's drinking, and he's having fun with it. And then you've got Henry, who's very apprehensive about it, and doesn't come back into it unless Pretorius kidnaps his wife. So that's what I think kind of one of the sub-points of Bride is, and it kind of relates to what we were talking about with the depiction of scientists, of, science is almost like this drug. And that if you or like mad science, I guess, is the better way to say it, since I don't want to generalize, is this drug. The creation of life is like this drug, and it's fun, and it's glorious, and it's exciting. Pretorius represents that. And then, of course, Henry is more apprehensive about it. So that's kind of how I wanted to bring it back.
Oh, dude, one thing. The fact that Dr. Frankenstein is named Henry. See, in the book, it's Victor Frankenstein. And he has a friend named Henry. Yeah, and it's like, in the first movie, it's like his best man, his name is Victor, and the doctor's name is Henry. It's like, why would you?
And even then they get it wrong, because his name is Victor Moritz, yet in the book it was Henry Clerval. So it's fucked up, but it doesn't really matter. I mean...
It's a name.
My theory is always that they changed it because this is an American production and the name Henry sounds more American.
I guess.
It's stupid. But who
can't just call him Vic?
that would be ridiculous. But whatever.
Just like have a Frankenstein movie where everyone's talking in like it's all like in like the old country, but everyone's talking like a 1920s, fast talking businessman, like, how you doing, fella? Turn on the electricity, Igor. Something like that.
Newsflash, read all about it. Modern day society has made paperboys irrelevant. That was like my favorite Simpsons joke of all time. It's this little kid on the street. Newsflash, read all about it. Modern day society has made paper vouchers irrelevant. It's like, aww.
And then he starved on the street because.
And then he died.
Yes.
Okay.
We all had a laugh about it.
Anyway, the thing about Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein for me, is that I respect it as a film. It's one of those films I realize that it's influential, but having not grown up with it, having not been alive when it came out or when it was being re-released in theaters to see like that, having seen parts of it throughout life being made fun of or being, copied, I have a problem connecting with it as a film, and I see it more as a museum piece nowadays. I think it's interesting. I think it's okay. I can see why someone would like it, but I definitely have problems with it thematically. I have problems with it in the way it was shot. I have problems with it on different levels, so I can't really say that I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting, and I'm not saying that I'm regretting watching it, but I don't think I'm going to find a point in my life where I'm going to sit down just to watch this. I might, do a Frankenstein marathon at some point in the future and watch it then, but I don't think I'd ever watch this on its own again.
I'm crushed. No, I'm not. It's fine. But
I love those movies. I love all the classic Universal films. But the thing is, I think the thing that really puts people off about it is just the old Universal movies, the old monsters, the old concepts have permeated through the popular culture so much that everybody thinks they know Frankenstein, everybody thinks they know Dracula, everyone thinks they know the Wolfman, but it's kind of like the best thing to bring it up. It's like from the source material to the actual, basically, the Frankenstein story, the book, was based on an actual experiment that happened in Italy. This scientist, this man
What?
said it was based on a real case. Mary Shelley read about it. Basically, this guy thought he can bring people back to life through electrocuting the corpse. Basically, what he did, he got a bunch of doctors at the time to join him in this laboratory, and he just put in collected like these electrodes to the corpse, and because he thought like electricity was the divine spark of God or something. And basically, what he did to all the basic pinpoints in the human body, and he basically took this giant metal rod and shoved it up the corpse's ass, and he just electrocuted the fuck out of that body. But apparently it opened its eyes and took a breath, but the doctors weren't really impressed. But from the records that scientist left, he made it all like, oh, the thing came alive and it stood up and breathed and then it died. But he overflourished it, but the doctors at the time weren't really impressed. So I guess that was a brief inspiration for the story. But that's the thing. The thing that really makes me laugh is that if you look at movies like today, like Hotel Transylvania, with all these lighthearted depictions of these universal monsters, if you think about what the original source material was based on, Dracula, the man murdered billions of people, well, hundreds of his own people, stuck giant spikes up their asses, and made a forest of dead corpses in his front yard. And it's just,
but I do not go blah blah blah.
Yes, and now he's like, he's like this light-hearted, pop cultural icon. They're like, oh my god, he has a daughter and he built a hotel. Like, and imagine if you take the real Vlad Dracula and just show him Hotel Transylvania. It's like, this is how you are seen in the future. It's like, but I murdered billions of people. I wonder if that will happen in like 500 years in the future, and that's the same way people will see Hitler. It's like, oh, Hitler, sure, he murdered 100 people, but like, look at him now. He's doing the jig with, Abraham Lincoln, or something like that.
He's getting there. I mean, he's
getting-
on his way to that.
Yeah.
Point. The one thing that I actually enjoyed about Blade Trinity is
Yeah.
that scene where Dracula sees the vampire marketing store and like goes in and just fucks it up, because that's how, like, that was exactly what it was like. He was like, but I'm to be feared, I'm to be frightening, and yet you're sitting there trivializing me. I'm not okay with this. And so he put the fear of God back into them. There's
And
the
he picks
one
up
thing
like
interesting they did with that character, by the way.
yeah, and he picks up like a Dracula vibrator, and he's like, "Okay, you're fucking dead." It's like you're gonna die.
Okay, Bill, I think you're gonna have last word on Bride of Frankenstein, and then we have an announcement to make.
Sure. Okay. So
wrap.
overall, I don't think it's hidden in this review that I absolutely adore this movie. It's tied with me, or it's my, I don't know. It's up there with my favorite Universal monster movies. I think it's a fantastic film. I think it's an interesting film. I absolutely adore it visually. I love Karloff as the monster. I think this is my favorite performance of his. At least of the stuff I've seen of him. I haven't seen a lot of his stuff beyond his Universal horror stuff, I'll admit, but this is hands down his best performance I've seen of him. And I absolutely love it for that.
I agree with everything Bill said. It's a fantastic movie. I love all of them. They're great. I'll probably rewatch them again sometime in the near future. You know, thumbs up for me. I love them all.
Okay.
So I absolutely adore this movie.
Alright, so that's our word on Bride of Frankenstein. And now, major announcement, change to the show. For those of you that have NPR and actually listen to it, and I know I'm probably the only one from my generation that does, I've been basing like kind of the structure of the show slightly off of the Diane Rehm show, because that runs for about an hour to 2 hours depending on when you're listening. And it's a talk show where they just got a panel in most of the time, or a guest or something, and it's a very interesting thing, and I like it. I wish Diane Rehm would, talk less, because she's got this old lady voice. But anyway, the one thing they do that we haven't, that I want to do, is they have call-ins. And unfortunately, we're not live, so we can't exactly do the exact same kind of call-ins. But adding to the format, if you want to add any of us on Skype, and we'll give our Skype names in a minute here, and send an audio recording of your voice, doesn't matter about quality because it's all going to be on shortly, an audio recording of your voice, 1 minute 30 to 2 minutes maximum time, by the way, asking us questions specifically about the topic we're discussing, bringing up points that you want addressed, we will play it on the show and we will respond directly to that. And make sure to give your name or your username at either the beginning or the end, so we can make sure to credit you and everything like that. So my Skype name, as with everything else, is Sid Part 2. Bill, what's yours again?
Zazubar.
And Milan?
Milan.jeffdick5.
Okay, so yeah, send in your recordings. I'm sure, I know we're probably not going to get a ton of them, but any that we get, we'd love to hear. If you can't get it on Skype, PM me with a SendSpace link. Use sendspace.com, upload the file, and send me the download link in a PM over YouTube, and I'll use that as well. So on that note, we're going to make sure to announce the topic of next week every week at the end of the show. So Milan, what is our idea topic to debate for next week?
My idea, this is a rough outline of what my idea is. Basically, the best examples of atmosphere in comic books, the best the best scenes in comic books that portray the most mood, the most expressionistic mood. Like it can be any sort of a feeling. It could be the most feeling of love, the most feeling of terror, the best mood pieces in comics.
Okay, so yeah.
Is it just comics, or are we talking film too, or just comics?
Just comics.
Okay. Just comics.
Because
all right,
so
since
we'll
it's like
yeah. So since it's like, you can't, there's no sound, it's just pictures and paper, and the pacing of the panels. So I guess it'd be like an interesting a challenge.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll be back with that next week. Until next time, we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.